All right, so it's very, very clear and apparent that something has to be done in the WNBA. We are ready to get into the second half of the season, but thus far, the first half of the season has been filled with negative drama, nasty news articles, the WNBA looking like the complete circus and clown show that it is. Kathy Engelbert clearly cannot handle the job. And I believe that this is the time Adam Silver is about to step in.
Something is deeply, fundamentally broken inside the WNBA. And for months, everyone in power pretended they couldn't see it. The cheap shots kept coming. The blind eye officiating kept happening. The commissioner of the actual league kept collecting paychecks while her sport turned into an embarrassment on national television. But here is the moment nobody saw coming. The most powerful man in professional basketball just walked into the room, grabbed the microphone, and said enough. Adam Silver does not get involved in small problems. He runs billion-dollar empires. He negotiates global television deals. He does not step into league drama unless the situation has become so dangerous, so out of control, and so damaging to the business that silence is no longer an option. And that is exactly where we are right now. Because what has been done to Caitlyn Clark inside the WNBA is no longer just a sports story. It is bigger than basketball. It is a full-scale, coordinated campaign to physically and mentally destroy the most valuable player women's sports has ever produced. And Adam Silver just fired the shot that changes everything. Drop a comment right now. Do you think he waited too long? Because this conversation is about to get very real.
We all know the first half of the WNBA season, obviously for Caitlyn Clark fans, was riddled with, back injury and just non-clarity on her day-to-day, game-to-game situation. 1 minute she's playing normal, the next minute she's on a minutes restriction. The minutes restriction never comes off. Then she's off. I mean, it's just been a circus. All of the brutal attacks, all of the negative, nasty things that have happened throughout the league early on that is kind of taken away from the spotlight of some good basketball. And I don't think that this league can continue this way. It needs to actually perform like a professional business, which is why Adam Silver has already inserted himself. He's already stepped in on the Kathy Engelbert, Caitlyn Clark situation. And that was just the beginning. He's going to be full-fledged monitoring things. You see, they have the...
Let's establish something clearly before we go any further, because some people have been allowed to rewrite history, and it ends right here. Before Caitlyn Clark set foot inside a WNBA arena, this league was bleeding out quietly. Attendance was soft. Television ratings were an afterthought. Sponsorship deals were modest at best. Teams were playing in half-empty arenas, and the mainstream sports conversation had completely moved on. The WNBA existed, but barely anyone outside of diehard fans was paying attention. That was the reality. And nobody in the league's front office had a single credible plan to fix it. Then she arrived. Not gradually, not slowly building momentum over a few seasons. She arrived like a freight train and completely obliterated every barrier that had been holding women's basketball back from the mainstream conversation. Her first WNBA game drew television numbers that shattered every single record the league had ever posted. Arenas that had been running at 60% capacity were suddenly selling out weeks in advance. Opposing teams were scheduling additional security staff because the crowd sizes had never been anything like this before. Merchandise lines that had been slow-moving inventory were suddenly backordered by thousands of units. And the money followed immediately. Television networks started aggressively renegotiating broadcast deals because the ratings data was impossible to ignore. Corporate sponsors who had never once considered attaching their brand to the WNBA were now lining up with serious, legitimate offers. The league secured chartered flights for players, something that veteran players had been fighting for and losing for years, largely because Clark's presence made the financial argument undeniable. One player generated enough economic momentum to change the working conditions for the entire league. Think about what that actually means. A 22-year-old rookie walked into a professional league and almost single-handedly funded an upgrade in quality of life for every single player wearing a WNBA jersey. She didn't have to do that. She simply played her game at such an extraordinary level that the money had no choice but to follow. And the veterans who benefited from every single one of those upgrades turned around and put a target on her back anyway. That is the foundation of everything that has unraveled this season. That is the context Adam Silver was staring at when he decided he had seen enough. And what was being done to her in return for all of that was truly something else.
Things you see, they have the NBA replay center coming now. It's a lot going on, man. Kathy's not built for this. And we got to get into this article in the New York Times because it's saying, yeah, Kathy has brought some level, the business is thriving, but why can't she escape criticism? For one, the business we all know is only thriving because of the arrival of Caitlyn Clark. But this business won't continue to thrive with the way it's being run. Really think about it. We have an entire couple airing each other out. Dejanay Carrington and Alyssa Smith. Adam Silver's gonna step in and do something about all of this dating. Or it's like a secret hookup club. Like it's crazy. It's not professional. In most businesses and most companies, you cannot mess around with people in the company. Like that is like a normal thing. And Adam Silver is gonna see to it to put an end to all of this nonsense. Let's take a look at this here. Bro, we can have cheating being aired out in the WNBA. Oh, me and you were boy.
There's a very specific word that the mainstream media has been terrified to use when describing what has been happening to Caitlyn Clark on the court. They dress it up in phrases like competitive physicality and veteran presence and welcome to the league moments. But when you strip all of that comfortable language away and look at the actual footage, what you are watching is something far more deliberate and far more troubling than anyone in a professional press box wants to admit. It started with Kennedy Carter. The hip check heard across the entire basketball world. The ball was not in play. The whistle had already been blown, and Carter launched herself sideways into Clark with the kind of force that would have drawn immediate ejections and league-wide outrage if it had happened in any other professional league on earth. But in the WNBA, it drew a flagrant foul, a brief conversation about rookie initiations, and then the sports world largely moved on. As if what happened was somewhere on the spectrum of normal. Then Angel Reese decided that the appropriate response to watching a fellow professional athlete get hit like that was to celebrate it from the sideline, not to look uncomfortable, not to keep her reaction neutral, to visibly, enthusiastically celebrate the physical abuse of another player. That moment revealed something important about the culture that had been allowed to fester inside certain corners of this league. And then came Alyssa Thomas. What Thomas did to Clark was not a hard foul. It was not aggressive defense. It was not a heat-of-the-moment basketball play gone slightly too far. She struck Clark in the throat with enough force that the play was later reviewed and upgraded to a flagrant foul. The throat. In a professional basketball game, the commentators fumbled through their coverage trying to find language that made it sound explainable. The coaching staff called it physicality. Reports suggest that Thomas faced no meaningful consequence beyond the foul upgrade, which lasted approximately one news cycle before the conversation was buried again. Now here is the question that nobody in the mainstream sports media will ask directly. If 3 separate physical incidents involving the same player happen within the same season, and that player happens to be the most visible, most commercially valuable athlete in the league's history, at what point does the pattern become undeniable? Adam Silver apparently hit that point, because what came next was anything but quiet.
Let's take a look at this here. Bro, we can have cheating being aired out in the WNBA. Oh, me and your boyfriend and girlfriend, you slept with 2 of your teammates. Oh no, you slept with 1 of my teammates. Bro, this looks crazy. This shit don't look professional. This is terrible. Take a look at this here, man. Courtesy of the New York Times. Here it says the WNBA's business is thriving, so why can't Kathy Engelbert escape criticism? Here it says Kathy was at the center court inside Barclays Center when the Liberty beat the Aces in a mid-season tournament. After her job title, she took the mic to congratulate the team and was drowned out almost entirely. Okay, she was getting the hell booed out of her. Okay, and that wasn't the first time. All right, now I want to get you guys to the. Pardon me. Let me get this clear for you. Let me get that clear for you. Okay, there we go. My camera loses focus sometimes when I travel. It's my travel camera. Anywho, so here it says, While there's seemingly no shortage of players other than team employees willing to complain publicly about day-to-day decision-making within the league, Engelbert's overall job security.
The most uncomfortable truth inside this entire situation is not about the players throwing cheap shots or the referees swallowing their whistles. Those are symptoms. The actual disease sits at the top of the organizational chart, and her name has been attached to one crisis after another since the moment Caitlyn Clark became the biggest story in women's sports. Kathy Engelbert was appointed WNBA commissioner in 2019 by Adam Silver himself, and she came with an impressive resume. She had served as CEO of Deloitte, a multinational business consulting firm with operations spanning dozens of countries. On paper, she looked like exactly the kind of sharp, business-minded executive who could modernize a league that desperately needed professional leadership. And for a while, the business metrics did improve. Revenues went up. Visibility increased. The league started generating the kind of financial momentum that made investors pay attention. But then Caitlyn Clark arrived, and the job became something entirely different. Managing the WNBA in the Clark era is not a consulting assignment. It is crisis management, cultural navigation, and high-pressure public relations, all happening simultaneously at a speed that the league had never experienced before. And the evidence that Engelbert has struggled to keep pace with that reality has been piling up in very public, very embarrassing ways. The most striking image of the entire season might not have been any of the cheap shots on the court. It might have been Engelbert standing at center court inside Barclays Center during the midseason tournament, attempting to address the crowd with a microphone in her hand and being almost completely drowned out by boos. Not polite silence, not scattered disappointment. A sustained, coordinated expression of fan disapproval directed specifically at the person running the league. That does not happen to commissioners who have the confidence of their fan base. Reports from The Athletic painted an even more troubling internal picture. Sources described a situation where team officials were unwilling to speak on record, even anonymously, about the state of leadership, which itself says everything. One high-ranking team official broke through the silence just enough to say, and this is a direct quote, "If we are going to make a move, we should make a move. If not, we need some leadership." That quote did not come from a frustrated fan on social media. It came from inside the league's own structure, and Adam Silver was reading every word of it. When Adam Silver decides to speak publicly about something, the entire sports world stops and listens. This is not a commissioner who fills press conference time with comfortable non-answers and carefully rehearsed talking points designed to say absolutely nothing. When Silver talks, there is always a reason, there is always a target, and there is always a consequence attached to the words he chooses. So when he stepped in front of cameras and addressed the situation surrounding Caitlyn Clark directly, the weight of what he said hit the WNBA like a thunderclap. Silver publicly stated that Clark had been turned into a political football. He called the environment surrounding her career unfair. He explicitly described a situation where a young woman who simply wanted to play professional basketball had been dragged into a vicious, grinding debate that had nothing to do with the sport itself. And then he went further. He called the entire situation, in his own words, incredibly unfair to Caitlyn Clark. Parse that carefully because the language matters enormously here. The commissioner of the NBA, the organization that financially subsidizes the WNBA and essentially controls its operational survival, did not say the situation was complicated. He did not say both sides have valid perspectives. He said it was unfair, specifically, directly, with Clark's name attached. That is not a diplomatic observation, that is a verdict. Silver also confirmed, when asked at a CNBC summit, that he had been involved in the disciplinary process surrounding Alyssa Thomas's throat strike on Clark. His exact words were careful. He stated he would not comment because he did not think it was fair to Caitlyn or to Kathy, but the confirmation that he was engaged at that level of detail told the entire story. The NBA commissioner was personally reviewing WNBA disciplinary decisions. That does not happen unless the situation has risen to a level of concern that the league's own leadership cannot manage independently. He also acknowledged that while he had not been at the bargaining table for the contentious collective bargaining agreement negotiations, he was playing a role behind the scenes. Behind the scenes. The commissioner of the NBA was operating behind the scenes inside the WNBA's most sensitive internal processes. The people inside that league who thought they were operating without oversight just found out in the most public way possible that they were wrong. And the shockwaves were immediate. One of the most consistent and maddening storylines of Caitlyn Clark's first WNBA season has been the officiating. Not in the normal way that fans complain about bad calls in every sport, that is universal and expected. This has been something more specific and more frustrating, which is the pattern of non-calls that seemed to follow Clark specifically whenever she was on the receiving end of contact that would have been whistled immediately in any other context. Watch the footage back, not the highlight reels, but the full game broadcasts. Clark drives into the paint and gets hit, no call. Clark sets up for a shot and gets pushed off her line, no call. Clark gets a forearm across the body while running a play, no call. Then the Alyssa Thomas play happens, which was so visibly beyond the threshold of acceptable contact that even the officials who allowed it to happen in real time had to upgrade it to a flagrant foul after review. Meaning the call was not made when it needed to be made. There is a level of frustration that builds inside a competitor when they feel like the rules of the game are not being applied consistently to them. And that frustration became completely visible during a recent game where Clark's emotions boiled over in a way that cameras caught in uncomfortable detail. She was caught on video expressing her frustration with the officiating in language that left nothing to interpretation. She had been fouled repeatedly with no response from the officials, and the pressure of an entire season of that experience finally came out in real time. Here is the thing about what Silver's intervention means for the referees specifically. The NBA Replay Center was already being introduced as a resource for WNBA officiating. That alone changes the dynamic. Referees who know that their calls are being reviewed by a centralized NBA operation are referees who are going to make different decisions in real time. The comfort of calling a borderline play as no call, because the crowd was loud, and the moment was fast, disappears completely when you know someone in a replay center is looking at the same footage frame by frame. Silver essentially installed cameras in the room where the officiating decisions were being made, and every single referee working a WNBA game now knows that the most powerful office in professional basketball is watching their whistle. That changes everything about how the game gets called from here forward. The public statements and the press conference moments are only the visible surface of what is happening inside the WNBA right now. The more revealing story is the one happening in the locker rooms, in the coaching staff meetings, and in the closed-door conversations between players and agents that the cameras never get to see. Reports suggest that the mood across multiple teams has shifted noticeably since Silver's public intervention. Coaches who had been comfortable using physical defensive schemes specifically designed to test Clark's tolerance for contact are now recalibrating their game plans. Not because they suddenly developed respect for her, because the risk calculation changed overnight. When the NBA commissioner is on record saying that the treatment of a specific player is unfair, running a defensive scheme built around targeting that player becomes a much more dangerous organizational decision. Sources around the league have described the atmosphere as tense in ways that go beyond normal midseason pressure. The Athletic's reporting painted a picture of an internal environment where even senior officials were unwilling to speak for publication because the political temperature inside the league had gotten so unpredictable. That kind of institutional silence inside a professional sports organization is not healthy. It is the kind of silence that happens when people are uncertain about who has power, who is watching, and what the consequences of saying the wrong thing might be. And then there is the layer of personal drama that has somehow managed to bleed into the professional environment in ways that would be immediately addressed in virtually any other major sports organization. Reports emerged of a relationship situation between teammates becoming public in a very messy, very visible way. The kind of internal conflict that typically gets managed quietly by a competent front office before it becomes an external story. Instead, it became public in a manner that reinforced every criticism about the league's inability to operate like a professional business. Adam Silver made clear in his comments that this kind of chaotic, unmanaged internal environment was not acceptable. He has been described as being fully engaged in monitoring the league's operations going forward, which is an extraordinary level of NBA commissioner involvement in what is supposed to be an independently functioning organization. The message to the locker rooms and the front offices could not be clearer. The party is over, someone is watching, and the standard of professionalism just got raised to a level This league has never had to meet before. There has been a version of Caitlyn Clark that the public has been allowed to see throughout this entire situation, and then there is the version of Caitlyn Clark that has been living through it. And the distance between those two images has been growing steadily all season long, until it finally collapsed in front of the cameras during a game that laid everything bare. The frustration that fans saw on the court was not about one missed call. It was not about one rough defensive play or one physical moment that went a step too far. What came out in that moment was the accumulated weight of an entire season of experiencing the same pattern over and over again, without resolution, without protection, and without the institutional support that any player in her position deserved to have around her from day one. She grew up in Iowa wanting one specific thing: to be the greatest women's basketball player of her generation. That was the goal, not the media circus, not the political debates, not the controversy surrounding every foul call and every social media post and every interaction she has with veterans who view her existence in the league as a personal threat. She wanted to play basketball at the highest level she was capable of, and instead she has had to navigate a situation that goes completely beyond anything a second-year professional should have to deal with. The mainstream media's role in this deserves specific attention, because the frustration Clark has expressed has not been directed at fans or at content creators who have been covering her story. It has been directed specifically at the massive media organizations that have framed her story in ways that follow her everywhere, into her family's living rooms, onto news programs that her relatives watch, into cultural conversations that have nothing to do with basketball. The reach of that kind of coverage is impossible to escape, and the emotional cost of being the center of a national debate that you never asked to be part of is something that very few athletes have ever had to absorb at this scale. What her breaking point actually revealed was not weakness. It was the evidence of how much pressure had been building without anyone in a position of authority stepping in to manage it. Silver's intervention acknowledged that reality implicitly. The player should never have been put in a position where the pressure accumulated to that level without institutional protection. That the NBA had to step in to provide what the WNBA should have been providing from the beginning says everything about the leadership failure that has defined this season. The question that every serious observer of this situation needs to sit with is not whether Adam Silver was right to step in. That question has already been answered. The question is what the WNBA actually looks like on the other side of this intervention, and whether the structural problems that created this crisis can be addressed by oversight alone or require something more fundamental to change. Silver's involvement solves certain immediate problems. The referees are now operating with greater awareness of consequences. The coaching staffs are recalibrating their approach to physicality. The disciplinary process has been elevated to a level of scrutiny that makes cheap shots significantly more expensive organizationally. Those are real, meaningful improvements that should translate to a safer and more competitive environment for Clark and every other player in the league. But the deeper issues remain genuinely unresolved. The question of Engelbert's leadership is not one that Silver's involvement automatically answers. Reports suggest that her job security remains a sensitive and complicated topic inside the league's power structure, partly because the governance model around the WNBA commissioner position is itself unclear. The Athletics reporting specifically noted that the Board of Governors' lack of involvement in Engelbert's original hiring created ongoing ambiguity about who she formally reports to and what accountability structure actually exists around her decisions. Silver acknowledged playing a background role in everything from CBA negotiations to disciplinary decisions, which suggests that the WNBA's formal independence from the NBA is more theoretical than operational at this point. That might be exactly what the league needs right now: a steady, experienced hand from the organization that has been successfully managing the business of professional basketball at the highest level for decades. But it also raises legitimate questions about the long-term structure of how the WNBA governs itself, and whether the current arrangement is sustainable as the league continues to grow. What is not in question is the direction. The WNBA is generating more revenue, more attention, and more genuine cultural momentum than it has at any point in its history. And the engine driving essentially all of that momentum is a 22-year-old from Iowa who just wants to play basketball. The smart business decision the only logical decision is to protect that engine with everything the league has available. Adam Silver apparently decided that protection required his personal involvement. And based on everything that happened this season, it is very hard to argue he was wrong. Here is what we know for certain when all of it gets stripped down to its core. A young woman came into a professional league and saved it from financial irrelevance. And the response from certain corners of that league was to make her pay a physical and emotional price for doing exactly that. The targeting was real. The leadership failure was real. The referee problem was real. And the fact that the commissioner of the NBA had to personally intervene to bring basic accountability to a professional sports league is perhaps the most damning indictment of all. Adam Silver walking into this situation did not just send a message to the players throwing cheap shots or the coaches designing schemes around intimidation. It sent a message to every young athlete watching this story unfold, that when the institutions fail you, and sometimes they will, the weight of the truth eventually forces the people in power to act. Clark never broke. She bent under the pressure, visibly and publicly, but she never broke. And now the most powerful office in professional basketball has officially taken her side. The real question is, was this intervention enough, or is this just the beginning of a much larger reckoning? Tell us what you think in the comments. Clark Spotlight, we will see you in the next one.